Hello, and welcome to Realign Journey, the unfiltered guide to self-discovery and reconnection. I'm Siera Sambrosky, your host, and together we'll investigate and discover the ways we have lost touch with our true selves and explore ways we can reconnect to it. This week I have with me Dr. Katja Rusanen. Katja is a #1 best-selling author and spiritual counselor who guides purpose-driven individuals to make peace with their past and reach their full potential. Gotta love that. Her pragmatic approach combined with spiritual insights brings results fast. With a doctorate in spiritual science as well as 2 master's degrees, Katja's expertise in spiritual psychology and soul awareness empowers her clients to succeed with purpose. Dr. Katja, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am super, super, super excited. Anybody that listens to me knows that reading your bio alone, they're like, yes, we understand why Sierra has her here because everything in it is fabulous and exactly aligned to me. So we are going to just get going straight away. Can you share with us one of the most pivotal moments or experiences you had, one of the times in your life, because you've probably had more than one, as most of us have, where you really had a big shift in either your career or how you saw yourself or where you were going in life?
That is a good question. And yes, as many, we have several things that led me where I am right now, but there was one specific event that I will take you back. Let's
Okay.
start there. Like I take you back to a little village in Finland. So that's where this accent is from, if you wondered. So, little village in Finland. I was 16 years old, and it was this springtime, and I fell in love for the first time. And maybe you remember as well your first love. Like all of a sudden, everything is so much more wonderful. Like sun is shining brighter, the birds are singing sweet melodies, everything looks more beautiful. And that was my experience. And then there was this bubbling happiness when we were together, like feeling the butterflies in my belly when you are meeting him or connecting with your special one. And that was my experience. But unfortunately, my love story did not have the happily ever after that all many of us want.
Mm-hmm.
But it ended very suddenly when my mom told the news and my boyfriend had died by suicide. And that moment when I heard the news, it felt part of me died as well. And it was like the grief that I felt was so overwhelming. And the question why kept coming to my mind. Like I was looking for signs or looking for some explanation, like why this happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I started like thinking that I wasn't enough. Like, if I would have been more attentive, because I was like, how didn't I see this coming?
Right. Yeah.
Like, I was at that age already, I knew I was intuitive,
Mm-hmm.
but I had not seen it.
How old were
And
you at that point?
16,
Okay.
so 16 years old. And I was just starting to think like I wasn't attentive enough, I wasn't attractive enough. Like, if I would have been more, he would have
Mm-hmm.
stayed. So I took it on me and I felt I blamed on myself that I didn't save him.
Mm-hmm.
Like somehow I should have known, I should have been there, I should have just been able to save him.
Mm-hmm.
And that guilt and blame took me into a very, very dark place.
Mm-hmm.
So dark that I was almost following his footsteps.
Mm-hmm.
But then luckily there was on the 11th moment, there was this light coming into my very, very dark mind. And it reminded me of my big brother who had died before I was even born. So I had never met him, but I felt that connection and I felt that he came to remind me of love. And
Mhm.
he reminded me of the love that my parents felt for me. And I was like, I can't make them lose another child. So
Mhm.
I need to figure out the way. So I turned back. The love really pulled me back to life. And
Mhm.
I made that choice to
Mhm.
continue my life, continue and figuring out a way out of the darkness. I had no idea how, but I just knew that giving up my life was not the answer. Yeah, I needed to start my healing journey through the grief, darkness, and trauma.
Mhm.
And that was really a turning point for me, the pivotal moment of choice
Mhm.
that I had in this lifetime to choose life.
Well, that's an awful lot. I mean, especially at such a influential age, right? I understand that psychologically, so much of us is formed before the age of 7, but I still deeply believe that so much of what we carry forward as our identity, and the way that we are empowered or disempowered happens in our teens.
Hmm.
And just because there's so much change that happens at that time also. So certainly this was, I can't imagine, a major life event to be having at such a young age.
It was, and it was very, very challenging. Of course, now when I think it's so different, I have much more tools, I have different perspective into life.
Mhm.
But back then, thinking of that 16-year-old who went through all that experiences, I have lots of compassion
Mhm.
because that young girl was suffering so much.
Mhm.
And for years after, I was so focused on that suffering
Mhm.
that I didn't really see what came after
Mhm.
because I was just focused on that loss.
Mhm.
And then there came a time though that I also learned to put on the smiley mask. And
Mhm.
maybe, I am talking about like sometimes there comes a moment when people started to say, aren't you over that yet? Like it was just a teenage crush. But for me, that even though the relationship itself had been short, couple of months, but for me, there was such a depth in that relationship
Course.
and like being the first real boyfriend you take home to introduce your parents, it was a big deal.
Mhm.
And then I just started to put on that smiley mask because people expected me to be okay, even though I
Mm.
wasn't okay.
Right, right. Um, I don't know if you and I had talked about this. For those listening, Dr. Katja and I don't know each other very well. In fact, we had one brief meeting and I was like, okay, let's save this. We're going to have great conversation. Will you be on my podcast? So we don't know each other that well. But so I am trained as a grief facilitator. Um, and so obviously I work with people that are in all forms of grief, and we talk about this a lot. And that grief can come from all kinds of things and places. It doesn't just have to be the physical death of a person. And yet also the biggest piece, I think, of all of it always comes down to that there is no timeline for grief, right? It lasts as long as it lasts. And just like it doesn't matter how brief that relationship was, you and I both know, especially from a spiritual perspective, if there was a karmic bond there, if there was some kind of soul contract or a repeat of past lives that you two were coming back in together again, it doesn't matter if you knew each other for 2 days. That connection and that sense of loss can be incredibly deep.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. And that's something I also often say to my clients as well. Like there definitely is no timeline.
Mhm.
And I love that you brought the karmic bonds and the contracts, soul contracts that we have here, because it is really seeing that life from soul's perspective.
Mhm.
That was one of the key elements that helped me to start finding the answers, like
Mhm.
seeing like deeper into what's there for me to learn from this experience that I went through. And it is again an opportunity. And sometimes, yes, these life lessons that we go through, like mine is the extreme life and death.
Mhm.
It's one of the polarities we have here in the earthly curriculum
Mhm.
that we go through one form or another, because it definitely has been one of my big key le key lessons here that I have been going through.
A repeating pattern for you is kind
Hmm.
of that life and death cycle.
Yeah, because it started even before I was born.
Right.
So I was born after my big brother 2 years. So from a very early age, I was aware of concept of death
Mhm.
because my parents tried to explain to me that why do we have photos of this boy who wasn't around?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
because I was curious, I was like, who is that boy? Where is he? Because there
Mhm.
was my sisters. And then there was this boy that I hadn't never seen.
Yeah.
So then they tried to explain the concept of that he's in heaven. Like that was the way they explained it to me, like he's in heaven, he's your angel brother.
Mhm.
And that awareness though
Mhm.
made me think of death from very early age.
Mm. And did it give you a kind of a sense of comfort around it? Were your parents good about, we hear a lot of times about like some parents being like where they don't want to talk about it at all. Like we've explained, move on. Yes, we keep his picture. Or were they really kind of inclusive about promoting the fact that he was around you and he was with you and he was still kind of a part of the family, even if he wasn't physically there?
It was a very, very painful event for my
I'm sure.
parents. And it was a thing they couldn't, my dad and mother, they couldn't really talk about that much
Hmm.
because I could see the pain and hurt in their eyes. Like anytime it was something they shut down.
Hmm.
And like my mother, we had a conversations about this later on when I started doing the work that I do now. We and we started having conversation, deeper level conversations, and she was very aware before she passed that she still held on to that grief, and she was just unwilling to let it go. She chose to carry it over.
Hmm. Almost consciously.
Yeah, she knew. She
Yeah.
was like, I know it's here. I feel the
Yeah.
pain is here in my heart, and I just can't let it go.
Yeah.
So she was very aware. She was very intuitive, gifted in her own way.
Hmm.
So I always count her as my first spiritual teacher because she taught me a lot about intuition, but that was her choice.
Uh-huh.
And then she later on saw me going through grief, and that was kind of her hope for me that I find ways to let go of that grief and pain.
That's actually what I was going to ask you was how was your parents supporting or showing up for you as you were processing this loss? Certainly, if you had now grown for 16 years with your mom as somebody who didn't let go of grief, who was kind of really holding that as a part of their identity and almost, it's so funny. I say, I don't know if maybe she's here. Well, I'm sure she is here with you, but she's saying to me that part of that is the legacy. So it's interesting that that's the word that she's using. But if you've been kind of modeled this example of how we deal with losing somebody that we love dearly, as far as like holding on to it and carrying it forward, how did that impact you and how were they showing up to try and support you during this time of you losing your boyfriend?
Mm. I remember tried to support me their own ways.
Mm-hmm.
But as I had seen them model, like, let's not talk about it's too painful.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did as well was to shut down this memory, put it in a box into a storage unit, and
Mm-hmm.
put a note on the door never to visit this again. But
Mm-hmm.
as you know, it doesn't work like that.
It does
Like,
not. It's a good try though for a while.
I really tried for years, always
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
put it back. But it
Yeah.
kept bouncing back like a beach ball, always like coming the moments when
Mm.
you last expected it came forward.
Mm-hmm.
And and for 10 years, I didn't even talk
Mm.
about it. So if you didn't know my past, I never brought it up. Like
Mm.
I was just hiding that chapter in my life when I met new people.
Mm-hmm.
I did not want to talk about that. I
Mm-hmm.
was always like trying to just skip that chapter in my
Mm-hmm.
life as much
Mm-hmm.
as possible. I think there was just long-term boyfriend later on who I ex shared because he saw the pain that I was still in sometimes, and he was like, "What's going on?"
Mm-hmm.
And I had to kind of bring this memory, bring this experience forward because I was in very much every now and then very dark place. So just letting him know that it's not about our
You or
relationship.
yeah.
It's just something I carry from the past.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, now the work that I do, like it's really, I want to help to liberate people from the prison of the past because I know how painful it can be when we are in that place carrying the past with us.
Yeah.
So it kind of, my mom as well, maybe she put me on this path to find ways, find the keys, how you can liberate yourself from the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned earlier, we'll go there then.
Yeah.
But I do want to circle back because I think it's important. You talked about the fact that because there were so many people that were kind of wanting you to get over it and move on, that you were putting on this, false mask of being happy and the smiling face and like, yeah, everything's fine. And you were just talking about how you kind of tried to compartmentalize and put that behind you. But I think that that is really significant to talk about because so many people do that. And sometimes we're still doing that to a certain degree, consciously or unconsciously, right? It's like whether when we're going through something in our lives, no matter what that looks like, how many times does somebody ask you, "How are you?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm good."
Yeah.
Right? We're all doing that to a certain degree at some time or another. I wish that I could
Hmm.
say I never do that anymore. I used to, like you, I lived in that space where there was this very sunny disposition and everyone saw me even when I was very young as outgoing and social and happy and I have talked many times about having a real memory and real awareness around the fact that the first time I had suicidal thoughts I was 10 years old. So
Mm.
it's something that has always been there and yet it was so rarely recognized by people outside of me, you know, even at later points in time when I realized how dark I was, I say that to people now and they're like, "Really? You seemed fine then." And I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I wasn't. I
Yeah.
definitely was not."
Yeah. Because we become really good in
Hmm.
hiding. We
Hmm.
could win Oscars.
Yeah.
Like when we are just hiding what's really within us. And for me, of course, like, well, you were even younger. And when you are maybe surrounded with others same age, it is, they might not have the capacity, the resources to hold the space for you.
Yeah, definitely not.
And
I didn't
then,
have parents that had the capacity to do
yeah,
that. So, yeah.
yeah. So then, luckily, you somehow found your way through, like I
Hmm.
did as well.
Hmm.
Like it was, and back then, I also did not want to accept help. Like
Mm.
my parents tried to be, my mom tried to talk to me, like in her capacity. I remember us sitting one day on the porch, and she tried to be there. But I was closing myself down. I
Mhm.
did not want to have the help because part of me believed that I didn't deserve the help. I had really hard time to allowing others to support me. My friends in the beginning, they came to check on me, but I found it really hard to open up as well because I had seen that these are things we don't talk about.
Mhm.
The emotional pain and hurt.
Mhm.
We just carry on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think certainly to giving whatever our age, what generation we fall into, and also like what our cultural backgrounds are like, what our family backgrounds are like, that's more prominent in some of us than others. That whole place of, we don't need to talk about our feelings
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and let's just keep moving forward. Everybody just keep showing up and doing what you need to do. And we're not here to process things and talk about how something's going.
Yeah. And that experience for me later on when I was ready to open up. And when you are, then normally you receive support, the guidance will appear, the support will come, but it comes from that willingness. But I believe that the silence is the thing that kills us because if we
Mhm.
don't find or people who we can communicate, and even if it's spirit, like that's how I often nowadays as well. Like I have spiritual counselors who I go to and spiritual teachers, but then sometimes it is also communication with spirit, God, whatever you call it.
Mhm.
But like having some form of way to express what's inside of you. So I
Mhm.
think that is really a key because for me, it started with writing.
Okay.
Like that was my way then to start expressing things. At
Okay.
first, it was, I knew this book will come out and be published, but part of that was test for me to be able to write. And I put it into fiction because that was easy at that time
Mhm.
to start the journey, but the core event was something that I went through. It talked about the losing loved one to suicide,
Mhm.
because that helped me then to start bringing different perspective in. But I think whether it's through writing, whether it's through art, painting, dancing, whatever that is, but finding a way to express that is super important.
Mhm. Now, how old were you when you wrote your book?
So that came 15 years later, I started
Okay.
writing.
Uh-huh.
So it was funny event. Do you want to hear about that? Like
Yeah,
how I
sure.
started writing. So remember, I had 10 years not shared about this thing.
Right.
Like I just like, okay, let's just plug it out. But then I was in a crossroads in life looking for deeper meaning and purpose because that was something I started yearning, finding the answer to why,
Mhm.
like why these things have happened, why we are here, why there is so much suffering. So I went to a palm reader because
Okay.
I was like, okay, shall I stay here? Shall I move to another country? What should I do? So I went to a palm reader, and this man was telling me a very accurate things about my personality. Very much like I was like, okay, okay, he knows his stuff. Like he seems to really see me. And then he's just asked all of a sudden, like, why don't you write? And I was like, how does he know that I have a story to tell?
Mm.
I knew what story it is because a little bit afterwards, my boyfriend's suicide, I knew that this is something I'm gonna write about.
Mhm.
It was just this, knowing that
That's what I was
it's
gonna
gonna
say.
be
Was that
something.
intuitive, like an intuitive knowing that
Yeah,
you?
yeah, I just knew I'm gonna write about it. So then when this man asked me like, why don't you write? I was like, how do you know? How do you know my secret? How do you know I have this story to tell?
Mhm.
And there and then, because this was in Spanish, my Spanish wasn't that good that time, so I just promised to him to start writing. And I went back home that night and I started writing. And that later on became my first novel, a young adult novel. But that's how I started expressing. And that was so healing.
Ooh.
Like it really opened that door to the storage unit. And I started to see things in a new light. I started to see that life didn't happen to me, it happened for me.
Mhm.
And I started to have that calling to help others. So I was writing that book for the 16-year-old me because I knew she was not wanting to get help.
Mhm.
So I thought like maybe, just maybe she would read young adult novel. So I put some glimpses like what had helped me on the way to
Mhm.
the book.
Mhm.
So that's what I did, like creating this fictional character and put it in a different country and put around different people, made it more, of course, more exciting, this
Mhm.
story, but it was really based on the experience that I went through and that how I got into writing.
Ooh. I love that you say that you wrote that for your 16-year-old self to be able to reach her, to be able to ultimately you were giving her a voice and helping her process, right? But I think it's like the other side of that is that you were also writing it as a way to be able to give her guidance, give her support. Um, and so therefore you were reaching everybody else, anybody else that was picking up that book and was needing to also experience and process through grief and an event like that and whatever other nuggets of wisdom you had in there, right?
Yeah. It was a really interesting healing journey as well, because there came this, as any time creative expression, I believe spirit is also supporting and working through me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this intuitive sense, tried to write it in Finnish, but I knew it needs to be in English.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a non-native English speaker.
Right.
And I was like, how can this going into this self-doubt and as well, like, how can this ever be real? Like, how can I ever make a book in English? My grammar is not perfect and all that. But I felt like this guidance, and sometimes I didn't even know the word that I wrote. I needed to
Mm-hmm.
later on check, like, what's this word? I have no idea what that means, and it seems to fit in. So there was this guidance. And I think also, like, we talk about purpose here, like when you are on that path, also support comes on your way. So I wrote another article because this book was heavy. So I wrote this fun article and sent it to two magazines in
Okay.
Barcelona at that time I lived. So I sent it to two magazines, and one of them replied, like, yeah, we want to publish this article because it was fun, like talking about Barcelona. And and then I went to this, they wanted to meet me before they published. I went there, and this editor, she was just 5 minutes in asking, what else are you working on? And then I was like hesitant. And then I explained, I'm working on this book. And she said, I can help you.
Mm.
I was like, what? Yeah, I can help you with the book. So when it's ready, send it to me and I give you feedback. And now she's still my editor. She
Oh, I love
actually,
that.
and she has helped me with all my books and a really, really good friend as well. As she is always saying, we have a soul contract, so I'm here to
Mm-hmm.
support you. But it was like amazing. I was like, wow. And she truly encouraged and helped me as a writer how to develop the story and all that. So she really supported my journey as an author. So I'm super grateful
Yeah.
for Spirit to bringing us together and having her support on the journey.
That's amazing. I mean, I deeply believe that when we really get synced up, when we really get aligned to our purpose and our path, the way that it is most fully, highly, excitingly known by spirit that they will bring all they will make it easy. They will bring us all the resources. They bring us all the opportunities. They bring us all the support that we need. And that's really, you were talking about a sense of suffering. And I think that there's so many of us that really can relate to these times where we didn't just struggle or have challenge. We actually were really suffering and a lot of pain. And so I think it's comforting to know and to hear that that life is not meant to be that way, right? That we are meant to be in peace, in ease, in a sense of love and freedom and joy and all these other things. And it sounds Pollyanna to some people, and it doesn't make it any less true. Doesn't make it less true. We are not meant to come here um, to just grind away and be miserable and never experience the expansiveness of what is joy and love and all these positive
Mm.
things. And so it's important, I think, for people to hear that there are these moments where, for some people, they might have a belief system that says this is too easy. And I would just like to point out that whenever you're thinking it's too easy, know that this means you are in the right energy, you're on the right path, you are in the right vein.
Yeah. And I have done things the hard way. Like I'm now
Me too.
signed up for like bring it ease. Like
Yes.
how about me experience and learn through having things flowing with ease? How about that? And of course, I get that. Like if we have gone through a lot of suffering, it's kind of like almost waiting the second shoe to drop. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you can't even be happy because we expect some things go wrong again. Like go
Yeah.
and get into the suffering.
Yeah.
But what if our true nature, and this is something one of my spiritual teachers says, what if our true nature is that joy,
It is.
loving? And then we go through these life events, and then we have the opportunity to get back into loving, get back into remembering,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever your belief system is, like whether it's God, spirit, but remembering that deep, deep soul level connection
Mm-hmm.
to something greater than you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the opportunity we have here. Because, of course, and this is something I often work with clients, like our life experiences, they leave their marks,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't need to define our future. We can rewrite how we see our past. We can't change those events as much as we would love to. I really wanted to find the time machine, go back, do things differently, save him, and all that. But then came a time like, okay, I need to just find the acceptance. Need to find the forgiveness. And I need to find a way to rewrite the story that it serves me and not always put me into this dark place.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how can I use my past as a stepping stone instead of stumbling block?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, certainly that's something that I talk with people a lot, and it's the way that, I work with clients is that we get to choose again. But I actually had just done a big piece and some posts and stuff on social media around the idea that it's hard science that we actually do get wired up. So when you have an experience, you create this memory path. Um, and then there's an anticipation when you come up and face something that it doesn't even have to look exactly the same, but feels similar or looks similar to your psyche, that you have an automatic expectation that it is going to have the same repeated result.
Yeah.
And also, what's true is that we don't have to. We do have the ability and the opportunity from a spiritual place as well as from a scientific place to actually choose different. That's one of the things I say all the time. Choose different. And if that didn't work, then we can still choose again. For me, growing up, the idea around that I got to choose how I felt, how I decided things, what I wanted, what I didn't want, all those things didn't feel. So it's been this big learning process and uncovering for me to realize that I get to choose. I get to choose every single
Mm.
day, every minute, every time, every experience, every person. I get to choose. What am I going to feel here? How am I going to experience this? Does this fill me up or does this drain me? Does this add to my life and expand in my life and in me, or does it take away from that? And so I think that being able to say, I am going to do this differently now becomes something that I don't want to use the word require, but potentially it would serve us to look at our past, right? To be able to kind of really see it without getting ourselves too entrenched in it again that now we're like back in it, but we have to look at it and we have to figure out how to move through it so that you can kind of untangle the energetics and the emotions around it in order to create a different experience the next time something comes up that looks or feels similar, right?
Yeah, I love that. And I love that choose differently. That option that brings that choice, brings that freedom, because we have that opportunity really. And what I have helped and what helped me as well is to look our journey as the souls having a human experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to say, like, okay, what if we are in the Earth School? What if we are here to study something? And we actually do have a curriculum, but when we are born, we kind of forget that great plan that we created as a soul. We were like, yes, I want to learn this. Yes, I want to learn that. Wow, that I want as well. And then we come here and we are like,
Why did we
why?
choose that?
Why? Why are these
Yeah.
things happening to me? Like, why? Why there is so much suffering? And because we were in the soul level, we kind of forget the how dense life here can be. The thoughts, the emotions, the physicality, and like all these relationship, cultural things, all these things. And in the soul level, we are all about the excitement to be able to learn. Like, wow, let's go, let's learn. So then I was writing my new latest book. There came this message because it started to get very dense. It started to get very serious, and
Mm-hmm.
then I sometimes get received messages. This came from angels. They were like, "Hey, let's uplift the energy here a little bit.
Lighten up a bit.
Let's just lighten up. This is too dense. We want to bring some new level for you to see the past." So there came this concept like, what if behind this earth school and all the life experiences you have gone are part of a lesson? So what class did you sign up? So maybe you signed up Learning to Love 101, that's very popular here,
Mm-hmm.
or Forgiveness Basics, or maybe it's advanced class, maybe it was Letting Go.
Mm.
That is popular too.
Yes,
How
it
do we let
is.
go? So that just shifted the energy. It made me actually laugh. All these class names I was receiving, like,
Oh, cool.
really? Like, okay. Yeah, I can see I signed up for that class. Oh, learning to love myself. Yeah, definitely on that class. And that way we can see if we even write down the main events from our lives. Normally we remember the highs and lows because we kind of forget the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So but writing those things down and then like, what have I been learning through these experiences in a positive sense? That's the key word there, in a positive sense.
Mm.
What have I been learning? And when we get that learning, often that also helps, and maybe it is helping to rewrite that story in a deeper level,
Mm-hmm.
seeing that past in a different way. And when you find that learning, it will stay with you. And when you
Mm.
look at your past, it has just changed. Even though it's still the same thing, but the learning, the lesson you learned is like, okay, wow, it served its purpose. And now
Mm.
I'm free to move on.
Mm. It's about shifting the lens in which we're looking at it, right?
Yes.
And letting go of the story that we tell ourselves about what the experience was.
Yes. That I love that you said that because that's really something I love how connected we are because that's definitely something I work a lot, like rewriting those stories. Because why it's important, because often after we go through challenging life experience or trauma, the stories we tell ourselves about us, about the life, about the event, often they are very limiting. They are not very encouraging or supportive. They are often discouraging. So we need to rewrite the story that you tell about your past, about yourself, about others, about God, and like all those stories.
Mhm.
You need to, and this was something I received a message in a one of spiritual workshop. You need to update and upgrade how you see yourself and how you see your past.
Yeah. Yeah, there's the I don't know what the right word for it is, but there's kind of a saying about, that we're the author of our own lives. And as I'm listening to you talk about it, I think, oh, that's what that really meant. No matter, people think like when we say that it means like, oh, we can manifest whatever we want and whatever. And not that's not a part of it. But I think what's more important is that people realize that we get to rewrite the stories and the way that we've perceived what we've already experienced and who we are. That it's less about being able to manifest yourself a millionaire. And it's more about being able to say, I am not broken. I am not a victim. I am not this thing that happened to me. I want to rewrite that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's super powerful. I do that in my Bounce Back and Beyond program,
Hmm.
guide people through these experiences, like write a story. First, you write it from that place that we maybe are sometimes the victim. Like
Hmm.
I was a victim of the world for years.
Hmm.
So writing that place first, and then write the same story, same event from the perspective, like seeing through the eyes of your soul, seeing through compassion, seeing yourself as the hero of your story. And then you have a choice. Like you talked about the choice. You have
Hmm.
two stories about the same event.
Hmm.
One written from the perspective of being victim of life. One is more the hero of your story. And then you get to choose which one
Hmm.
you want to keep telling. The choice is yours always.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's perfect. I was gonna ask you a piece of advice you would give to somebody as they want to rewrite their story and process, a particularly difficult experience in their life, in their past. Though honestly, that's a really good one. It's just to actually try and
Yeah.
literally write your story again. But what other kind of advice would you give somebody if they are really feeling like, I really want to move beyond this for myself. I want to see myself as more than this traumatic experience or this event. Um, what advice would you give them?
One of them would be to have support on the journey. We are not
Mm.
meant to walk this path alone. And it comes easier if you have somebody else holding the lantern for you, holding the light for you. Because what happens often, if you have gone through an event, there has been fear involved, we don't really want to go there. Because that's how we are trained. Like if you have ever touched a hot stove when you were a child, hopefully not, but most of us have because we were curious, how does it feel? And what happens? You pull your hand and you try to avoid touching it if at all possible in the future.
Mhm.
And that happens when we go through trauma or challenging life experience. We don't want to go there. And when you have somebody holding the space for you, supporting you through, it just gets easier. And as I was resisting getting support in the beginning, and then when I received the support, I received the benefits. And
Mhm.
now I'm real advocate having a support
Mhm.
because you don't need to do this work on your own.
Yeah.
So there is different levels of support or even asking spiritual assistance if you for some reason don't want to have a human assistance,
Yeah.
but like just having support even one level. So that would be definitely a recommendation. And then of course I also want to just it's just making that choice that really embodying the thought that your past does not need to equal your future.
Mm.
It is, it starts with that choice. Like
Yeah.
you were talking about choice. So we need to make that conscious choice to choose. And then maybe in the beginning, you can't say that like as a fact,
Mhm.
but maybe you can say, I'm choosing to believe that my past doesn't need to equal the future.
Mhm.
So just softening it up, but like opening that door that it's possible to change how you see your past. It's possible to liberate yourself from the person of your past, and you got that key. And it's already within you because your soul already knows. It's just finding a ways to connect with your soul's wisdom.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that you said it's possible because I think for some people, particularly, and if they're in a really dark place, sometimes we can't say, "Oh, I'm gonna do this," or "I am doing this," but you likely can at least start with kind of the baby step of saying, "I do believe it's possible."
Yeah,
And sometimes that glimmer of possibility is the glimmer of hope, and that really is the door that we need to be able to start a new path.
that's right.
Right.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you so, so much for being here. I'm super grateful that you came on, that you shared part of your story, you shared so much wisdom with us. I will put all the links, all your goodies in the show notes for people that are listening, so you can go to the show notes and get all that. And is there one particular way that you would really like for people to connect with you, or is there something that they can, some product class, whatever that you've got going on right now that you'd love to share with people?
So, of course, I have lots of resources, especially on YouTube. I do
Okay.
meditations, clearing meditations. I share spiritual insights. And I do have my book coming up. So, it
Oh, I
is Your
love
Spiritual
that.
Curriculum. So, you can find that on Amazon, and it will be sharing the 5 steps to make peace with your past and transform your future. So that is just helping you through. And if you want additional support, reach out to me. You can just reach out different. I'm in the most social media platforms, or you can just email me and just know that you are not alone.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that and for saying that. I think there's so many of us that need to hear that we are not alone. Um, and also just, I totally got chills when you were talking about your book and the 5 steps. I think that is beautiful and amazing. So I hope you all will go check out Katya's books and her meditations. I know I'm going to, and connect with her, follow her on social media. Thank you so much again for being here and sharing so much of yourself.
Thank you so much for having me, Sierra. I love our connection. So thank you.
And to all of you sojourners joining us today, thank you so much for being a part of our journeys while letting us be a part of yours. And until next time, be well.